Greetings, everyone. We will just give it a few moments as those are still joining and connecting to audio. Okay. Um, Again, we'll just give it another minute as a few are still connecting. Well, hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Stacy Aquero, and I am the Associate Director for International Admissions at Stony Brook. But today I am here to talk to you all about sort of what pre-med in um, the curriculum means and what kind of options students have when they are considering becoming a doctor or other kinds of health professions majors. And we'll, of course, talk a little bit about Stony Brook. There'll be plenty of time for questions through our Q&A as well, and have opportunities to put some questions in the Q&A. I have my colleague Amanda with us who will be in the background starting some Q&A as well. As we talk about pre-med and alternative medicines, I want you to know that a lot of this is available at Stony Brook, but some of this is more generic. And I may talk about programs that are not offered at Stony Brook as well. And we're happy to answer some questions really about the guidelines of a variety of health-related programs and the pathways to get there. And a lot of students in high school, as probably most of you are, no matter where you are in the US or the world, will often come to an admissions counselor and say, I want to be a doctor, or I want to study medicine. And that's great. And there's a lot of options for you to do that. But in the US, there is a path to become a doctor. And that path is first to begin with getting your undergraduate degree, your bachelor's degree. So when you finish high school and you go to college, you study in a bachelor's program and your undergraduate studies. And some schools will have a pre-med major or just a track of courses that you take in order to then have to apply to medical school, which is a professional graduate level program. So it's really important to understand the distinction between completing your undergraduate degree, which is a traditional four-year degree program, and then going on to medical school or many other professional level health related professional level schools, which we will talk about throughout this presentation. At Stony Brook, pre-med is a track of courses you take along with any major that you want in order to successfully complete what's known as prerequisite courses to then be eligible to apply to medical school in the United States. Now, medical schools outside of the US may have other requirements, and every medical school, of course, will have specific requirements. But for the most part, medical schools in the US will have a specified number of courses that are required really to be successful on the MCAT as well as to be successful in medical school. And we'll go through them in a minute. As I mentioned, at Stony Brook, pre-med is a track of courses. It is not a major. So you can actually be any major you want and still be pre-med, and you'll be taking these tracks of courses. Most students at Stony Brook choose to do biology or health sciences. It is up to you, but you could even be an English or history major. You don't have to be biology or health sciences. Health sciences is a nice option, which we're going to talk about again in a little bit, which really gives you a variety of opportunities to explore and consider alternative ways to not only go into medical school, but alternative programs to medicine that are still in the healthcare industry. And we will talk about those throughout the presentation as well. As you can see at Stony Brook, we have a number of different programs that are really separated by all of our colleges and schools, which is very common at large research institutions. And as I mentioned, students have the opportunity to be a part of any major they want and still go into a health-related area and be pre-med. So most of our students, again, will be within the College of Arts and Sciences and choose programs such as health sciences or programs in biology. We actually have both a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science in biology. Again, a lot of students think they have to be in that Bachelor of Science in biology because they want to be medicine, but our Bachelor of Arts is actually more suited for a pre-med student, where the Bachelor of Science is more suited for students who wish to do research, work in labs. Believe it or not, we have students who will study business as well as pre-med because they want some healthcare administration along with medical school. We also have some combined MBA programs once you're in the professional level program. Many students will choose biomedical engineering as a major within our College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. We even have students who will move along into our School of Communications and Journalism because they want, again, some of that public relations and administration side of things. I'm going to skip some of these bullets. We do have a School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences. This program has a little more focus on our climate studies, marine sciences, but we do also have marine vertebrate majors. So students who really want some pre-vet or even any kind of marine life and animal life would really be suited in some of these programs as well. And then we have a number of health-related programs that are mostly in that professional graduate level program. Our School of Dental Medicine, School of Health Professions, which has a number of undergraduate and graduate degree programs, which we're going to talk about a little later. Our School of Medicine, our School of Nursing, and a School of Social Welfare. When you study pre-med, again, with any one of those majors or any of the 200 academic majors within all of those programs I just talked about, you're going to have to take a number of biology courses. Things like cell biology, microbiology, genetics, anatomy. You will also need to take courses in psychology and sociology, as the MCATs and medical school want to see that you are not only prepared for the biology side of it, but you are have the social science skills and the social skills. Bedside manner will come into play when you're taking those psychology and sociology courses. And these are courses that are also going to be strongly recommended for students who are planning to take the MCATs, obviously, which you will need. You will see that those biology courses are 300 level, which means you will need to have some lower biology courses, which would be prerequisites to those courses. Some students fill those prerequisites with AP Bio or IB or other kinds of dual enrollment credit. And if not, you would be taking those your first semester, again, on that pre-med track. So as we are kind of helping explain how you would fit all of this into a traditional curriculum when you are considering coming to Stony Brook and doing, again, perhaps a different major than a biology or health sciences, but still being pre-med, you want to understand that there is enough room and flexibility in a U.S. curriculum and at Stony Brook, the Stony Brook curriculum, to be able to complete these kinds of courses. You will have your major courses, which will consist of core courses and perhaps a specialization within that area. Again, biology, you can do some specializations, things like ecology and um, uh, bioinformatics and a variety of different specializations. There's also some honors programs at Stony Brook, which you may or may not have heard about. You are still eligible to do these honors programs while still pursuing pre-med. And these, beyond your major, you will then have general education courses. These are all courses that are focused on skills that we believe are essential to your education here at Stony Brook, your ability to succeed throughout your education while at Stony Brook for the next 4 years, and even after that. So these will be skills that will help you through medical school, will help you through your career, and they're on a variety of different disciplines. So there will be multiple classes to choose from within each of these skill-based classes that are needed. Things like writing in your discipline, because if your major is health sciences, writing research papers that are more like journal articles to get published in medical journals are way different than if you are a history major or a philosophy major and writing a more qualitative kind of analysis of two different viewpoints of a book. There's also within the Stony Brook curriculum a lot of experiential learning, and we're going to talk a little bit later about all the ways that we believe in learn by doing here at Stony Brook, which will also be helpful and successful in any of the healthcare areas that you take part in. So let's talk about why Stony Brook for health majors. And if you haven't been to campus or haven't done an info session, regular information session with us, whether in person or virtual, or even gone on any of our YouTube videos, I highly recommend it. But right on campus is the Stony Brook University Hospital, as well as our School of Medicine, our School of Health Sciences as well. And the access that you will have to the hospital to have availability for hands-on volunteer work, observations, shadowing, leaderships will be really at your fingertips. Many large research universities will have hospitals on campus, but not necessarily within physical walking distance on campus. Many university-related hospitals are several miles away, and while they're affiliated, aren't right on campus. And so this is all within walking distance, and really many of the upper division classes are right in the hospital, which makes things really great. It also, within our health science major specifically, we allow for specialized degrees and concentrations. So one of the things that our School of Health Professions really does is know what the local market in New York and in the US is in terms of in-demand health-related career paths. And so we have several specializations with our health science majors that we're going to talk about that have just sorry about that, just as much potential in terms of job market and income, and will allow for a very lucrative career in the health professions. So you really will have a tremendous amount of access to our hospital, including a lot of research that's happening on campus and within the hospital and within our medical school. So as I mentioned quickly, we really believe in what's known as the learn by doing model at Stony Brook. And that is through a number of different ways. Of course, I talked a little bit about things like shadowing and observations, which are part of the experiences in many of the healthcare um, majors, and even to get admitted to some of those majors. But all of our programs and all of our classes really believe in this learn by doing model. It could mean experiences outside of the classroom, like lecture series that our hospital has, where they will talk about new vaccinations and new discoveries in Lyme disease, and they will have physicians from all over the world come and speak to the general public about a variety of different topics such as that. We have our career center who will offer these workshops, our library who will offer workshops, and not just on health related areas. And then we have formal ways where you have opportunities to study abroad, opportunities to be involved in research on campus, all to give you that learn by doing experience. Our research at Stony Brook is done through a number of ways. Of course, if you may know, we are a top tier research university in the United States. We have dozens of research centers on campus, including a research and development park, as well as co-manage a national laboratory called Brookhaven National Lab. Faculty and our graduate students are heavily involved in research at the federal level, at the state level, and on campus with private grants as well. And undergraduate students have the opportunity to be a part of research from very early on. Meaning that we have an undergraduate research and creative activities office and program that helps partner students with faculty members, with graduate students doing research. Students can even do research that they have been working on or they may have, and be assigned a mentor to help along with that research and access to labs for that research. Our students also have the opportunity where they're involved with research to actually present that research in a large sort of conference forum that we offer on campus at the end of every academic year, and even publish that research. These are things that are going to be really important when applying to many of things like medical school or dental school, or things like physician's assistant, physical therapy, occupational therapy, are going to want to see more than good grades. And those kinds of research opportunities and involvement is going to be something that will become a big part of your health-related graduate application. Other kinds of things that will be important, of course, will be some leadership, and we're going to talk about that a little bit after this slide. But let's talk a moment about some of our health profession academic programs. And I spent a little bit talking about pre-med and what that means in terms of the curriculum, along with your major courses and your general education courses and some very specific courses. Pre-dental and pre-vet are very similar to that. Students will be assigned an advisor at Stony Brook who will help them to make sure that they are on track, taking the right courses. And again, our health science major at Stony Brook will prepare you for not only the pre-med, the pre-dental, and the pre-vet, but again, you can be any major you want. We do have a nursing program at Stony Brook, and I like to spend a minute just talking about that nursing program. I may have some students who are very interested in nursing versus pre-med, or not 100% sure what they want yet, which is of course okay. Nursing is what's known as an upper division major, which again, you'll have the opportunity then to come in, explore what some of the health related areas are, be able to do some shadowing and observations at our hospital, talk to the faculty, and learn what your opportunities may be. So your first 2 years, you will be doing prerequisite courses, as well as those general education courses, the Stony Brook curriculum, and apply into our nursing program for year 3 and 4, where the majority of the curriculum is pure clinical based in our hospital, where you're taking those kinds of clinical type courses. Physical therapy, physician's assistant, occupational therapy, which I don't have up there, all also graduate level programs at the master's and or doctorate level. Those, again, you will do any kind of major and sort of take this pre-health track and be able to move into or apply into then your graduate level program. Stony Brook also has an undergraduate degree in clinical lab sciences. Clinical lab sciences is really popular now, and some students are not even realizing how popular that major can be. That's really if you're interested in a lot of the forensic side of being a doctor. You'll, of course, work in a lab, work with blood and other varieties of lab tests, where you will be not only for the forensic sides, but be able to really dissect a variety of different specimens and be able to detect diseases and or the forensic side. Athletic training, also extremely popular and at a master's level at Stony Brook. So students who are interested in that. At Stony Brook, we don't have some other programs, but also popular avenues for students, nutrition, pharmacy, as well as we have a respiratory care program, which has also become extremely popular at Stony Brook. Really a area that has become popular after COVID, where people have realized how much in need respiratory care therapists are. Those are those who are monitoring people's breathing, if a ventilator is needed. And then we have, and this is just a handful of some of our clinical concentrations and non-clinical concentrations within our health sciences, things like anesthesia tech, a medical dosimetrist. Sometimes when I have people in person, I ask how many people know what a medical dosimetrist is. I certainly didn't until I became staff here at Stony Brook. But this is the person who will help the oncologists determine the amounts of chemotherapy that are needed. They will also work with the radiation therapists and technologists, and they're really going to study the dosage that is needed and really help. So if you think about the number of people who are on chemotherapy, who are on radiation, and getting treatment for cancer, this is the person behind the scene who is giving all of the instructions on dosages and frequency and amount, as well as helping for chemotherapy setup, exactly where it's targeting. So really, really important part of the team of people that are taking care of you. And that's the point of today, of course, is that understanding that when you think you want to go into medicine, that there is a team of people and a team of professionals that are all inputting to the doctor who is going to kind of sign off or talk to the patient about some of these things. There's a number of non-clinical concentrations as well. And most of these health science programs are an additional year at Stony Brook. So you do a health science major, and then either in your final year or a 5th year, you do a concentration in one of these areas. And so being a health science major gives you the option to not only have sort of this pre-health track or pre-med track, but it also opens the doors to all of these other kinds of concentrations and career paths that you may be interested in. And I think that this is something that's really important, not only as a future professional, right? If you think about, well, I still want to be a doctor 100%, but now I have the exposure and the knowledge, not about some pre-med course I had to take in genetics that I learned a textbook about genetics. But now I'm going into medical school, understanding and maybe have shadowed an anesthesia technologist or a radiation technologist, and I've had exposure to different careers within the hospital that I'm going to have to work with and understand with. And then, of course, the reality is that medical school can be highly, highly competitive. And it is really important to have multiple options when you are um, in your senior year and applying to medical school. Again, you will have an advisor and they will walk you through this, but it would be advisable to apply to multiple kinds of programs out there for you to consider in terms of your best chances for moving on into the health professions. So we talked a little bit about how there's opportunities outside of the classroom at Stony Brook in terms of our learn by doing model as well as our shadowing. I already talked a little bit about research. I want to also make mention that Stony Brook has an amazing EMT program that's a volunteer program at Stony Brook and something that is really popular at Stony Brook and gives an amazing experience for students who are moving into any of the health related areas. We also have a tremendous amount of just campus activities, study abroad opportunities, and internships. And we're going to talk in a moment about some opportunities that students need to have while they're at school. But I'd like to spend a moment about our clubs and organizations in the campus activities area. So you're going to see that at Stony Brook, we have things like a pre-med society and a nursing club, and every one of those health related concentrations all will have clubs. And so those are great because of course you're going to do social activities, but of course you will also make friends of upperclassmen who have taken some of those classes that maybe now you need help in. They're going to be working in hospitals at one point before you, and you're going to have connections for internships and those shadowing opportunities as well. And then, of course, for later on for job opportunities. So I think it's really important to get involved on campus, and of course, socially for so many reasons. But students who are getting involved in activities, in our academic activities, really will show those connections immediately to people who will be able to help them in the future. We have so many students who want to get connected with alumni for that reason. But as a first year student, if you come in and are connecting with juniors and seniors in those clubs who are leaders in those clubs, you now have friends who will go on to be alumni and have an immediate connections on a deeper level for all of those things. We do also have a career center on campus that will help connect you with all of these kinds of volunteer opportunities, internship opportunities, and even help students in sort of a career coach way to kind of help see which avenue might work best for you. One of the best things about coming to a place like Stony Brook, where you have so many options in the healthcare area, is to start exploring and finding learning about different career options and pathways, and then helping kind of create your own path to see where you're doing and where you want to go. And the Career Center will absolutely be there to help you through that, as well as your advisors. And so I have here, of course, our Renaissance School of Medicine, but this really is about applying to any medical school as well as any of the professional level, graduate level, health related programs. You typically would apply in your final year of undergraduate studies. So in your, just like you're applying to university in your senior year of high school, you're applying to any graduate program in your final year of your undergraduate degree. And you're going to need more than just pre-med and good grades. You are going to need to have those research opportunities that we talked about. You're going to need to have leadership opportunities. So getting involved in those clubs and activities that I talked about. And it doesn't have to be those academic ones. It could be social. Schools, medical schools are going to want to see how you show your involvement as well as your leadership abilities. You're going to have an MCAT. You're going to have an interview, which is, of course, different than perhaps what you're doing now. You might have chosen not to take the SAT and you're not a great test taker and you're, test optional, because most schools are test optional right now, but an MCAT will be important. So you'll have to understand the complexity of that test. And then most of those other graduate level health related programs, things like PA and PT, may have different tests that you have to take, and an interview. So it's really important to understand that there will be a lot of time management in your time in your undergraduate degree, whether it's at Stony Brook or somewhere else, to then apply into medical school. So again, a lot of students will come, and because they're on a pre-med track, think, and I need very high grades to get into school, that all I need to do is go to class and study. And while, of course, that is the main focus, it will take more than just those pre-med track of courses and good grades to get into medical school, because it is competitive and they are going to look for a number of other items to get in. Now, I'm not from the medical school, so I can't talk specifics about that, but that is just in general. But we are successful in seeing that a number of our students move on to graduate and professional level schools with a 94% rate of employment, as well as moving into those professional level schools. I will make mention, a common question is does our medical school and our other graduate level programs give preference to Stony Brook graduates? And those are separate admissions offices. We've been told that there's no normally special preference for our own graduates, but that's something that you would eventually have to talk with our graduate and medical school programs. So at that point, I'm just going to talk a minute about Stony Brook in general, even though I've weaved it in for anyone who is not from our area. We are a large research comprehensive university located about an hour outside of New York City in a very suburban residential community with over 200 academic majors to choose from. As you already know, we have a hospital on campus. We also do have some other sites. We have in the middle picture a campus in Southampton that is home to many of our graduate professional health related programs as well. Things like we'll have a physical therapy center out there. And we also have Stony Brook University Southampton Hospital. So our hospital on campus is just one of our hospitals. And there's really a network of hospitals and sites throughout the New York, Long Island area that students have the option to be a part of in the health related industry. We also have a campus in Korea that's mainly for engineering and business programs, but in case you're interested, We are ranked number 58 in the nation, number one public university in New York State, with really named as a school that really prides itself in value and commitment to access to education. We've also been recently selected for the lead anchor institution for the Center for Climate Solutions on Governor's Island, which is just off of Manhattan. And then a few other things about Stony Brook we're happy to ask and answer. I sometimes do this presentation specifically for international students, so that's an email address for international students. So we'll put our regular email address in the chat for you. But I'm going to open it up to any questions that have come through. Let's see here. What is the percentage of pre-med students that are in the College of Engineering, and are there students with engineering majors other than biomedical engineering doing pre-med? I honestly don't know that statistic offhand. I would say our two biggest majors for pre-med is health sciences and biology. Probably biomedical engineering would be the third, but don't quote me on that. There are probably students doing other majors than within the School of Engineering, because pre-med, while we track those students, is not a major that a student applies to an admission. So, but if you email us, we can look into some of those answers and get back to you on that. So I kind of already answered this. Does Renaissance give a preference for Stony Brook bachelors? And they don't give preference to anyone over that. What would applying for medicine be like for an international student? So not all medical schools in the US accept international students. The Stony Brook School of Medicine does, not necessarily every year. But the what I talked about in terms of the pathway to medical school and any of the alternative careers to medicine would all be the same pathway for an international student. You would just have to do your research to where you're applying if they accept if they accept international students or not. A question about why is the BA more suitable than the BS for pre-med programs? So at Stony Brook specifically, I can't speak for any other programs. Our Bachelor of Arts in Biology is a more suitable program for pre-med students than our Bachelor of Science. Our Bachelor of Science courses are really more focused on students who want to do research. They're going to be a little more specialized than the courses you need for that are going to help prep you better for the MCAT. And what percentage of Stony Brook pre-meds make it to medical school in first try? So I don't know if there's a specific number for that is tracked at Stony Brook, but again, 94% of our graduates are moving on to professional level programs or at job at hand. So I will leave it. I think we had someone raise their hand, and hopefully maybe you put that question in the Q&A. We'll be here for another minute or so as you can continue to put any questions that you may have in the Q&A. If not, I know Amanda already shared in the chat our email address, enroll@stonybrook.edu, which at any point in time you can continue to ask questions. And then all of our presentations are recorded and are on our YouTube page, where this will be in a few days as well, or maybe about a week or so. Okay, another question. Are there faculty members with medical or healthcare? Absolutely. So the question is, are there faculty members with medical or healthcare backgrounds who mentor students? So again, that's sort of one of the amazing benefits about coming to Stony Brook, where you have access to so many healthcare majors that we offer, as well as the hospital. So our doctors are often teaching faculty as well. And we are a teaching hospital and a teaching university. So you will often interchange and have access to shadow many of these medical and healthcare professionals. And then, of course, all of our faculty, so if you're in a physical therapy program, your faculty are going to have been physical therapists who are now faculty. Your biology teacher, your bio 101, or even your genetics or anatomy teacher is most likely not a doctor. They have a PhD in biology. And then a question about, I take it that it's 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of medical school. So yes, so a traditional bachelor's degree, all bachelor's degrees are 4-year programs. Traditional medical school is 4 years, whereas dental school and things like PT and PA are typically 3 years. After you finish medical school, to be a doctor, you still have to go through things like residency, which is basically like a paid internship where you're still kind of learning on the job experience, and many other things before you're eligible for a complete license and your board. Do you require SAT scores for the pre-med track? So the pre-med track is not a major. So you're not applying to a pre-med program. You're applying to any major you want to take. Again, whether that's history or our more popular ones like health science or biology or biomedical engineering. None of them require SAT. We do have, for our domestic students, you must be a US citizen or permanent resident, a very, very small honors program called the Scholars for Medicine program. We accept only a few students a year to that program. It is a combined program, but not a shortened program. It's for very high achieving students that will give the opportunity to move directly into the Stony Brook Medical School. That program does require an SAT. You're probably looking at, I believe, about a 1,500 and above and near perfect GPA, as well as things like leadership and activities and involvement, and even some research in high school for admission into those programs. And there would be an interview for those programs. A question about how many years is residency. So that's something after you complete medical school, and it can vary depending on things like specializations. And those will be questions that you will talk to medical school admissions when you're really researching that later. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We know that there are lots of questions and sometimes some of confusion among what pre-med versus medicine versus what all of those things are. We're here to help. So again, feel free to email us, as well as continue to look for more presentations that we have coming up in the future, as well as any of our pre-recorded presentations on our YouTube page for the future. So we thank you so much for joining us and hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.